Okay, guys, welcome back to our water investigation, where we investigate everything surrounding community water fluoridation and the Henrico Board of Supervisors. So, some of you asked me, what the heck was that video about where I told the Henrico Board of Supervisors to stop outsourcing their brains to the so-called authorities? Why would I do such a thing, right? Well, it's because they are outsourcing their brains to the so-called authorities. So, some of you may not know that before I spoke at my very first Board of Supervisors meeting, I had been emailing the Henrico Board of Supervisors, county manager, and asking who has decision-making authority when it comes to community water fluoridation. Now, why would I ask that, right? Well, the reason is because Henrico does not have an ordinance. If you are doing community water fluoridation, it's left up to the state and local governments. So Richmond, they passed an ordinance years ago. Fairfax, they have an ordinance. So it's left up to government. You cannot have one individual deciding for 330,000 people. The waterworks in Henrico, it's the people's, right? So the DPU director doesn't own the waterworks. The county manager doesn't own the waterworks. It's the citizens of Henrico who own the waterworks, right? So we must be the ones deciding on community water fluoridation. And because there's no ordinance in Henrico, I wanted to figure out, well, who's calling the shots around here, right? I mean, it's a reasonable question, and I was simply going to send an email to whomever is calling the shots and just ask them if they would reconsider community water fluoridation. But the response I got was deafening. What was the response? Silence. The silence was deafening. So when I finally did get a response, the answer that I got was not correct. So the answer I got was that the Virginia Department of Health is requiring Henrico to add fluoride to their drinking water. Virginia Department of Health doesn't have the legal authority to require any waterworks in Virginia to add fluoride to their drinking water. If they are forcing somebody to add fluoride to their drinking water, then they would be violating the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act and likely subject to, some sort of criminal charge, I would imagine. So the Henrico Board of Supervisors and DPU director kept saying, when I said, well, who's in charge here, right? Who's making the decision? We have 330,000 residents. So who's calling the shots when it comes to community water fluoridation? I emailed, made phone calls. I was getting nowhere, right? So finally, the answers that I started to get was, well, VDH is forcing us. They're forcing community water fluoridation. I said, they don't have the authority. They said, well, yeah, they're forcing us and they recommend it. So, and they're the health department. So, of course, we're just going to do whatever it is that the health department wants us to do, right? Because they make such great decisions. Just think about COVID, right? The Virginia Health Department recommended everyone run out and get experimental COVID shots. We saw how well that worked out for people, right? So anyhow, I was not happy with the conversations that I was having. So that's what prompted me to say, please stop outsourcing your brains to the so-called authorities. But let's look into some of those claims that the Henrico Board of Supervisors and DPU director was claiming. So the first claim is that Virginia Department of Health is forcing Henrico to add fluoride to the drinking water. So let's take a look and see what the Virginia Administrative Code says, okay? Does the code say that waterworks are required to add fluoride to the drinking water? Let's check it out. Okay, this is the Virginia Administrative Code on water fluoridation. And here in the first line, it says that the board, and that's going to be the Virginia Department of Health board, recommends that all community waterworks in Virginia be optimally fluoridated. Okay? So, is Virginia Department of Health requiring fluoridation? Well, the Virginia Administrative Code says that they're simply recommending water fluoridation. If Virginia Department of Health is forcing community water fluoridation on any waterworks in Virginia, then we have a real problem here, right? And that warrants an investigation. But let's see now what the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act says, okay? Let's take a look. So this is the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act, and it says, no national primary drinking water regulation may require the addition of any substance for preventive health care purposes unrelated to contamination of drinking water. Now, I understand that the language in the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act is a little convoluted, but we'll look at other documents that support the interpretation. So in essence, the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act, it prohibits that essentially the federal government cannot require fluoride. They cannot require that you put drugs into the water. And the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act put EPA in charge, and EPA gave primacy to VDH, which means all of these organizations cannot require water fluoridation for preventive healthcare purposes. Okay? So, the claim that the Henrico Board of Supervisors is making is that VDH is requiring water fluoridation. One, the Virginia Administrative Code doesn't say that. Two, the head guy at Virginia Department of Health's Office of Drinking Water says, no, we're not requiring it, nor did we ever require it. Three, we've got the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act, and I'll show supporting documents to help with that interpretation. Okay, so let's move on to the second portion of the Virginia Administrative Code. So, but just real quick, for months and months and months and months, the folks in Henrico were saying VDH is forcing the waterworks to require fluoride. And after getting some individuals involved from Office of Drinking Water, they then shifted their language to say, instead of saying that VDH is requiring, they say, well, VDH recommends water fluoridation. And because VDH recommends water fluoridation, we're going to add it into the drinking water. We're just going to do whatever we want. And I said, well, who's making the decision? Is the DPU director making the decision? Well, at first he said yes, but then he said no. Is the county manager making a decision? Well, he didn't come out and say, yes, I'm making the decision. I believe the words that he used was, if it's the devil you seek, then name my name. Okay, so to me, that's him taking responsibility. But who is not taking responsibility, right? That's going to be the Board of Supervisors. They are not taking responsibility for this. And I think that they're doing this on purpose, because if things go sideways, then the Board of Supervisors can throw the DPU director under the bus, maybe throw the waterworks operators under the bus, and throw the county manager under the bus, right? Because the Board of Supervisors can sit back, right? And they can say, well, we never approved water fluoridation, and they were just doing it on their own, right? Well, they cannot claim ignorance at this point. The Board of Supervisors knows what's going on, and they refuse to put an end to it. So I think it's going to be a little hard to throw these various county employees under the bus, right? Anyway, we'll touch back on that. But let's get back to the Virginia Administrative Code, shall we? Okay, so the second part of the Virginia Administrative Code says fluoridation feed systems shall be designed to deliver the optimal fluoride ion concentration as determined by the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Does the United States Department of Health and Human Services recommend community water fluoridation? No. So when there's a recommendation on community water fluoridation, this is where it comes from. It dates back to 2015. This is the Federal Register, and it says Public Health Service recommendation for fluoride concentration in drinking water for prevention of dental caries. This is a notice by the Health and Human Services Department. So Health and Human Services put out this notice. Well, what was the notice? This notice was regarding a final recommendation, and it says that the United States Public Health Service updates and replaces its 1962 drinking water standards related to community water fluoridation. So the recommendation did not come from HHS. The recommendation actually came from the Public Health Service. If you look through this entire document, you will not see anywhere, I couldn't find it. If I'm wrong, leave a comment, but I did not see anywhere that HHS is recommending community water fluoridation. It's the Public Health Service that made that recommendation. So what does that mean? It means that the way the Virginia Administrative Code is written, it means that VDH recommends whatever HHS recommends. Well, HHS is not recommending water fluoridation. That's the Public Health Service. So if HHS does not recommend water fluoridation, that means that the board technically does not recommend water fluoridation, right? I think that whoever wrote this got a little mixed up, because if you go back to this notice, the Public Health Service replaces its 1962 drinking water standard, and in this 1962 standard, HHS did recommend water fluoridation. But after that, this document replaced everything. So, I mean, maybe somebody could say, well, in 1962, HHS recommended it. But again, the Public Health Service updated that recommendation. That old recommendation recommended adding fluoride to the drinking water up to 1.2 milligrams per liter. And this recommendation changed it to 0.7 milligrams per liter for a couple reasons. One, a lot of people were having their teeth damaged by the fluoride that they were drinking. About 90% of the people in the U.S. had dental fluorosis, and folks were outraged. So they said, okay, well, if y'all don't like your, having ugly, jacked up teeth, then we'll lower the standard, to make you go away. And two, I believe that there was a lawsuit launched against HHS. And so I think the fact that they changed this recommendation to 0.7 managed to get those folks off their backs. And I don't think they pursued the lawsuit any further. I think this was kind of, them kind of coming to a middle ground. And the same things that the citizens were arguing about back then is the same things that they're arguing about now, that it causes reduced IQ, it damages your teeth, it damages your thyroid, it damages your bones. So the whole kit and caboodle. I'll probably try to just leave a link to these documents below, so then you can read through them. They're very interesting. Okay, so HHS, do they recommend community water fluoridation? No. The Public Health Service recommended and continues to recommend water fluoridation. Let's take a look at a more recent document. So this document is, so it's found on congress.gov, and it's a Congressional Research Service product. This is a report, and it reads the development of federal recommendations and regulations for fluoride in drinking water. This was written really well. It'll get you caught up if you're not familiar with the lawsuit and the history of water fluoridation and everything in between. So it says that in April of 2025, the HHS secretary directed the end of its water fluoridation recommendation, and the EPA announced that EPA would review scientific information on fluoride. So Secretary Kennedy, let's go out of this. Okay. So Secretary Kennedy, we all know, is very much against community water fluoridation. And so he came out, saying that this is a neurotoxin. He's against it because, see, fluoride, yes, it makes your teeth harder. That much is true. But at what cost, right? So it doesn't just, the fluoride doesn't just know to go to your teeth. It also goes in your bones. It goes into your brain, goes into your thyroid. When it goes into your bones, it can cause you to have hip pain, arthritis, a variety of issues. It can start, damaging your spine. So you have a curvature of your spine and you're, hunched over all of the time. It gets into your brain and the research that I'm reading shows that it leads to Alzheimer's symptoms. The reason for that is because you've got aluminum floating around in your body, and then you have this fluoride, and it creates what's called aluminum fluoride and can concentrate in your brain. Anywhere where calcium goes, the fluoride wants to go, right? So you've got calcium in your teeth, and the fluoride is attracted to it. So in your teeth, you have a crystal called hydroxyapatite. And essentially, the hydroxyl ion gets replaced with that fluoride ion, and then you have what's called fluoroapatite. Well, your brain uses calcium to signal, and you have lots of calcium in your pineal gland, and so that fluoride is attracted to the calcium, and again, it concentrates in your pineal gland, causes lots of disturbances with your hormones, sleep-wake cycle, and so forth. The fluoride, you've got your thyroid, and you have your thyroid needs iodine. The fluoride competes with iodine, and the fluoride wins out, right? So then the fluoride will displace the iodine, and it will cause you to have a slower thyroid and can contribute to hypothyroidism. So there's a whole litany of issues, but for me, it goes back to ethics. Is it ethical to be adding a drug into the waterworks, right? Is this appropriate to do? The dosage is all over the place. Sure, they might aim for 0.7 parts per million, but it's all over the place. They can't. It varies. When I had my water tested, it was at over 0.9 parts per million. So there's this idea of it being precise is a fallacy. The fluoride is not naturally occurring fluoride that we're drinking in Henrico or in Richmond. Again, this is a waste byproduct that comes from the fertilizer industry. It's not pharmaceutical grade. It's not FDA approved. And the Henrico Board of Supervisors does not have the authority to be adding it into the drinking water. Nobody has the authority in Henrico to be adding it into the drinking water. The county has yet to, I'll put it this way, and I'll say allegedly, right? Allegedly. The county has not produced one shred of evidence to prove to me that they have the authority to be adding fluoride into the drinking water. And we'll go over that. We'll go over some of the claims. But I just wanted to tackle this first claim of VDH is requiring Henrico to add fluoride into the drinking water. VDH cannot do this, okay? I cannot say this enough. They cannot do this. And if they are, we have a real big problem on our hands. So, again, I'll just wrap it up with these final words. We shouldn't be outsourcing our thinking to anybody, right? So the whole purpose of us having a local government is so we can do what's right for ourselves. We should not just do whatever recommendation that they have, because if things go sideways, the folks that made that recommendation, they're not going to take the fall. The folks adding the drugs to the water, they're ultimately the people who are responsible, okay? You're the ones putting it into the water. You're the ones directing the waterworks operators to put it into the water. So ultimately, you are the person who's going to take the fall at the end of the day when everything comes out. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. I get a little bit fired up, as many of you know. And yeah, so join me in the next video. I'll post a new Board of Supervisors speech tomorrow. So stay tuned. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.